Hi, everybody. Kimberly here. I should think of a new intro. It's obvious that you know I'm here. Funny story. So, when I was younger, my grandma always used to say, before the start of New Year's, you need to have your ironing done. You need to have your laundry done. You need to have your house clean. So, you start off like the new year in a really, really positive, done, complete, clean slate way. It's apparent that I have none of that done. First of all, because I don't iron. I put my clothes in the dryer to fluff, which works fine. And my laundry day is on Monday. So you should see the bucket of laundry that I have. It's pretty high. And my daughter's doing laundry today. And yeah, so I'm totally not ready for the new year. But like I said in the previous video, I don't really do New Year. I'm like, so like my kids, God bless them. So I went over to my in-laws for New Year's dinner, and I find it literally impossible unless like I have a lot of like stuff going on around me. I find it literally impossible to stay up till midnight. And so like, but my kids were like, "Are you staying up till midnight? Are you staying up till midnight?" And I'm like, "No." They were like really disappointed. So I'm sorry. But anyway, it's the new year. Usually my New Year's thing is that I take down my Christmas tree and I take down all the Christmas stuff. So that's all done. So now my house is back to normal. Disclaimer for the video, I'm still learning where to look. But I think I have the lighting fixed. So we'll see how that works today. I just wanted to, and yeah, I should just have a standard script. I just wanted to come in today, and actually it wasn't my request, it was Chris's. He kind of popped in this morning, and he actually just wanted to offer you guys how absolutely proud he is of every single person who's doing their thing on this planet right now. He it was, I guess, like it was just, I don't know why, but it was just really so important. And I'm actually just waiting for his energy because I think he wants to channel today, but it was like just so important for him to tell you guys how proud he is of you. I was thinking this morning, what does it really mean to be human? And I really don't know what that means because, there's this perception sometimes that being human isn't as mighty as, other planets might have, other beings that are more mighty than human. There's a reason why we came to this planet. And what kind of set me off with this, and what Chris, he came in this morning to tell me was that he's proud of everybody, was because I got this message that, like, I was asking, I usually like have like a reading or whatever, like near my birthday or near the new year. And it's not like a big entailed reading. Like, it's just like kind of like, us messengers need tune-ups too. So I got this like mini little reading, and it said my guides, and I know this, asked me to kind of take a step back because it's time for me to just be human. I didn't really understand that. Like, I got it, but then I just started like feeling it out, and I'm like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that we just have to go through the Groundhog Day of life and just, be, be whatever? Or is it actually uncovering what it really means to be human? Chris is now here, and he says he's still trying to figure that out. He says being human is something that we really haven't wrapped our heads or brains around yet. He's saying that it's just such a gift. And if we realized how big of a gift it was to be on this planet and be human now, we would be uncovering a lot of potential that maybe we can't see, he's saying, with the sucky bits of life. He's saying that he's choosing to come back. There's this battle that's going on. It's called the battle of the spectrum of light. He says there's this perception or this idea that it's a battle between the light and the dark, when really people are actually, there goes my dog, choosing to battle the spectrum of who they are. He says being human isn't just one thing. He says people talk a lot about the spectrum of light and how, like, there's like the white and the blacks and then everything in between, right? And he's saying that one person is not just one of those. It's like the whole spectrum. He's saying that, like, different bits of people are trying to come in, different facets of people are trying to come in, different ways of being, different knowledge, or evolution, evolving into something that maybe we're not used to. That's all trying to come in. And what he's saying is that he's part of this battle of the spectrum of light, because the spectrum of light and the person, people are battling their own spectrums of light. Because when there's like something new coming, there's always like a battle to like shove it down or away, because it kind of is pushing us out of our comfort zones. The real battle, he's saying, isn't the battle of the light and the dark. He's saying now the battle is the all-encompassing, the all-encompassing spectrum of light within the human being. And if you hear thumps and stuff upstairs, it's because my family's up, and it's like I can't really tell them to be quiet. That's not fair of me. So you'll be hearing thumps and bumps, but maybe I can fix that in the audio. The light and the dark, there's always going to be like, it's always going to be thought of as white or black. Because when people think of a spectrum of light, they don't think that they are fighting something so beautiful, something so colorful in their life. But there's been like, it's been like so used to either or now, where an either or doesn't exist anymore. It's like the all encompassing. And sometimes it feels like really a lot bigger, a lot more overwhelming than what we're used to. Just, okay, so let's get back on track. Jeez, it's like a freaking zoo up there. So Chris is saying it's not about it's not the either or anymore. And that is what is feeling so huge within the person. And he's saying the fight is just like, he's saying a lot of people give up a lot of who they really are, a lot of who they want to be, just because their spectrum is not going to look the same as another spectrum and another spectrum. And so they're just kind of like throwing in the towel of this evolution, but yet the fight continues because the evolution is going to happen no matter what. So it's either you're going to kind of go with the flow of it, or you're going to kind of go kicking and screaming. He says, even on the computers, when you see that spectrum of color, that the color wheel that you're choosing from, he's saying that looks the same on all the computers, but actually with the human being, the spectrums are going to look a lot different. And so there's people that are going to look towards other spectrums and battle their own perfection of spectrum because they want their spectrum to look like somebody else's. And he's saying that's why there's so much repetitive nature on Earth right now, because there is a battle with not only the personal spectrums, but there is a battle with he's saying that there's a battle with individualism. There's like a struggle between wanting to be an individual on a planet and being different, and then wanting those differences to look the same as others. And he's saying that people can choose to actually pick their spectrum, what they want to work with. And part of being human is deciding to work with everything that's sort of shining right now. It's like an individual will not look in the mirror one day and then the next day look in the mirror and be exactly the same. And that's like the battle with the black and the white. He's saying that he wishes people would welcome more what they're facing in the mirror. That even people will see in the reflection, like different. Sometimes they won't recognize what's looking back at them, and they will battle that, thinking that he says they will try to cover it up. They'll choose another mask. He's saying something is so crazy to me. He's saying Kim was watching reels. I'm a reel addict. I really like them, but he's saying Kim was watching reels. And he says that there's this product for women and men that will actually, like, it's quite like thick, like putty, and they put it on their face and it will make their skin like total glass and smooth to cover up whatever they believe the impurities are. He's like, he can't even get over the products right now that are there to cover up what's trying to shine through. And yeah, he's laughing to himself. He's like, the battle of the spectrum of light is a battle to dull it down, not even dumb it down, but dull it down so that your colors, your spectrum aren't shining brightly to get attention, and yet we crave the attention from others. So the attention that we crave from others is us, getting the products, getting the masks, getting whatever to dull it so it doesn't create any sort of uncomfortable feelings. He's saying it's kind of the same with like the truth tellers and the messengers. And he's like, sure, there's a risk to rock the boat. But he's like, waves of change were never created if people just decided to sit in their boats and just, go with the flow all the time. He's saying Cole too, like they have talks, like Benjamin Cole and Chris have talks about how Cole was saying, like, go against the grain, do something that, feels good to your heart and stuff. And he says, that's exactly it. It's like, this spectrum of light, if you think of the chakras are all joining at the heart. And we talk a lot about the heart space, but in actuality, the heart is the space, the home base for anything and everything to happen in connection with spirit and heaven and the earth. And he's saying all that chakra system is actually just coming in as a spectrum of light and beaming out through the heart. And he's like, people are pushing it back, pushing it back. And he says he just sees it and he sees it. And every time that somebody like accepts what they have coming out of them, even if it's just a tiny bit, he says he celebrates it. He says he's really got his boots on the ground right now. He says he's not, the battle of the spectrum of light isn't like this war zone. It's not like this battleground that's like everywhere. He's saying that it's more with the individual. And what he likes about where he is now is that he can go to all these kinds of individuals and support their battles with their spectrums of light. He's showing me, he kind of is like clearing the fog away from a person so they get a sense of clarity. Clarity comes when you are okay with your own spectrum. And clarity comes more and more when you're able to accept, like, even like the little bits you can like accept, and then it'll just be, things will become clearer and clearer and clearer. And that's what he would like to be a part of, because he says he was even, he said he's gonna use the word guilty. He was even guilty of trying to dull it down. He said he had a lot of issues with trying to accept his spectrum of light. He was seen as Chris Cornell in this way, in this type of music, in, you know, how he presented himself. What he was battling was that he wanted to remain an individual, you know, like a kind of like a world full of the same. Part of why his addiction got so bad was because he really couldn't deep down accept who he was at the core. He felt really lonely. He had a lot of good friends and he had a lot of connection and he had a lot of love around, but really it was him, his relationship with him. He was constantly battling this spectrum, and he always in the back of his mind thought of it as dark. Like he couldn't really see the light of it. And he said his wife was really integral part of him being able to see his own light. So in a way, he learned from her how to battle this spectrum. And the battle isn't like fighting who you are. The battle is fighting what's keeping that hidden. And he's saying authenticity is becoming a winning game on this planet now. Even if it's really tough to see that right now, he's saying authenticity is really winning out, which is really good news. I really love to hear that. As a truth teller, it's like super good news for me. He's really got to give credit where credit is due, because people don't feel like they're being validated enough. He really, really, really wants to take this opportunity to give everybody who's working on themselves, working on trying to be okay with who they're becoming. He's saying people who are starting to say no to what feels uncomfortable to them. He just really wants to give credit where credit is due. He says there's not a lot, there's people who will give credit, but he's saying there's not a lot of people who will take somebody aside and say thank you for all that you're doing. And he wants to say thank you for all that you're doing. He wishes there would be, he would like to see more of a celebration of life on this planet. And he's circling back to the question, what does it mean to be human? To be human means to celebrate your humanity. He says people don't understand how very powerful they are. Being human isn't just the Groundhog Day of life. Being human is exploring the self and actually taking the chance to allow that to be shown. Being human is taking the chance to be honest with yourself and expressing that outwardly. Being human is not just about seeking adventure outside and like nature and stuff. Being human is seeking the adventure within you. There's a lot going on in this physical body. It's not just going out to work your 9 to 5, going to the gym, getting your workout. He's like, there's a lot going on in this human vessel. What it means to be human is discovering the whole spectrum of your humanness. So somebody saying to anybody, it's time to only, like, you've done enough, now you can just try to experience being human. He thinks that could have been, that message could have been presented better than what it was. Because being human isn't just a simple act. Being human is why souls, spirits decide to come to this planet, to be born to this planet. And being human is why spirits choose to come back in service to this planet, still being spirit. Because being human, you will never find this experience on another planet in this moment now. The spectrum of the human being is so individual and so specific that you would never be able to get the same experience of being human on any other planet now. Specifically, this dimension, he's saying, if you were going to look at your life in a different dimension, it would not be what you are experiencing right now. What you're experiencing right now is the most whole and complete thing that you will ever experience. And he said that he would like people to see or to look at their humanness as an adventure in itself and not something to be thought of as not enough, lacking, dumb, repetitive, no excitement. Because really it's an insult. He's saying, really, you're insulting yourself. The other aspect of being human is the connection to other humans, but not a connection in like a surface level way. He's like, the brightest and best spectrum that you could ever feel is connecting to another human who is connected to their own spectrum. And he's like, the more and more and more and more humans connect with their spectrums on this level of authenticity and truth and clarity, and sensing the adventure within them, and then sensing the adventure with yourself, and just having that connected experience with the real definition of being human. He says it's just insanity. He's saying people talk about Jesus like he was this miracle maker, and he was. But don't forget what he said when 2 or more are gathered in my name, or you can do just as much as I have. He's like, the thing is, Jesus was a huge example of what it was, the power it was to be human. And it's not about copying, because he says Jesus never wanted anybody to copy him. He wanted to be an example to just show people what really they could do. And Jesus was human. And for years and years and years and years, Jesus was like worshipped and looked up to. But the whole point of it was to show humanity what they could really do. Jesus wasn't always a very quiet man. He's shown as a very like peaceful, quiet man. No, he wasn't always like that. When he went off by himself, he was reconnecting with the adventure of being a human being. So yeah, he's shaking his head. He said he wished that the message that's why he came today, to clarify the message that I got, because it could have been presented in a much better way. Because being human is not just sitting around, you know, I don't want to say that. Sitting around and waiting for death to come, he says. Being human is something, he's like, just think of it. You were made in the image of the one true source. That's not something that's boring to him. But he's like, people are just battling their own light, because it is so specific to the one person. It is so specific to the individual spectrum, but yet they keep battling it, because he's saying humanity has been grouped together in this one thing. Humanity isn't just one thing. And he wants to congratulate and give a high five to everybody who knows now that humanity is just not one thing. It can't be one thing. The earth can evolve with just one thing. So he's just showing me that he's up in an old attic, and he's like clearing the cobwebs of people's battles, because they can get so extreme. These battles can get so extreme that there is addiction and there is escape. And people are trying to find the best, the best, the best, the best. And the battles are making people, want the past back, or want to jump into a future that isn't ready for them yet. The only way you're going to discover what it's like to be human is to be okay with experiencing what you're experiencing right now. There is so much power when you can begin to experience the now. He says the term now has become a bit of a cliche, but it is so important, because nothing else matters. You can only connect with your spectrum in this now. And part of the battle, he says, is people racing around, ignoring their humanness and trying to jump into another person's skin. Wow, that's crazy. He says he sees it all the time. It's like the energy of somebody who's watching another person is literally trying to jump into another person's skin, life. He's saying that's what it means to live vicariously. Living vicariously is part of the battle, because there's nothing more important than what you're experiencing now, regardless of if you think it's boring or the same old, because every single day is a brand new experience. And that's the adventure of being human. He wants people to really, really find the adventure in being human again. He says there is so much self-discovery. Okay. He's saying that if people were more into self-discovery, they would be uncovering so much stuff. But the self-discovery takes so much courage to do. Because part of doing the self-discovery is not only discovering the wonderful, great, blissful things of yourself, it's also discovering the dark aspects of yourself. He says it's so important to really go on an adventure and taking risks to discover the darker aspects of yourself. And that's part of this whole battle of the spectrum, because the spectrum isn't just dark. The spectrum isn't just light. The spectrum is the whole of it, all of the color of oneself. And some colors are darker than others, but some people just want the pink. Some people just want the yellow. Some people just want the green. But you're coming to experience the whole kit and caboodle. And that's the adventure. He's also saying that people have this tendency to want to travel to find themselves. And he says, no matter how much you travel around the world, if there isn't any sort of self-reflection involved in that, you're not going to find yourself while traveling. He says the beauty of being human, the cool thing about being human, is that there is always some sort of landscape to explore within self. He says people often wonder how they can explore self. He says not a lot of people like the answer. He says meditation is a really good way. However, people use the excuse they can't sit and meditate because their brain goes everywhere. So he's saying part of the battle of the spectrum is also battling the assumptions about what it is to go into self. You cannot stop a thinking mind. A mind is built to think. So instead of getting frustrated with trying to quiet a thinking mind, he says it's important. He says, think of your head as a jar. And he says, open the jar. Because the only way the thinking mind is going to stop for 5 minutes is if you actually acknowledge you have thoughts. And this is part of only one of the parts of being human, of the whole spectrum, is because the spectrum will also show up in thoughts. But when you can reconcile the fact that you do have thoughts, you will also reconcile the fact that you're allowed to let your thoughts express themselves. Thoughts are only just wanting to be heard and acknowledged. It doesn't mean you have to take action on them. But the more you just let the thoughts come up, the more they'll be able to be out. He's like, it's surprising what would happen if a person went into meditation, let the thoughts come. It would be surprising he said, about how much a person would learn about themselves just from the thoughts that come up. He says you don't have to battle every thought. Thoughts are meant to come up to show you things about yourself you never realized before. But every thought doesn't have to have action. It's like, oh, you let the thought come up. Oh, that's interesting. Bye-bye now. Thank you for expressing that. Thank you for expressing that. Communication, healthy communication doesn't just happen with like person to person. Healthy communication with other people starts when you are able to communicate in healthy ways with self. This is part of being human. If you don't have a healthy relationship with self, you're not necessarily going to have a healthy, honest, truthful, trustful relationship with other people in your world, he's saying. So he's saying, he said, let the thoughts come. Part of the adventure, like if somebody's backpacking, he's saying in southern Chile, if somebody's backpacking in southern Chile, the weather can change on a dime, and you have to be prepared for that. And they are prepared for that. That's part of the adventure because you never know what you're going to get, right? It's the same with thoughts. It's the same with adventuring into yourself and exploring the thoughts. What are the thoughts? So let them come, because that is getting to know, instead of fighting the thoughts, instead of battling that part of your spectrum, let the thoughts come, see what they have to say in a detached way. So be an observer of your thoughts, right? He says that's part of the adventure. He's like, that's part of like buying your plane ticket to your destination in self. And then you'd be surprised about how much you could go into meditation once all those thoughts are emptied. Another adventure is changing the voices in your head, he's saying. People give too much power to the voices in their head. There is a lot more capability of being able to change the voices in your head than what you considered to be. He's having trouble expressing this because he doesn't want to come off as being a hypocrite. He said he had a lot of voices in his head telling him stuff that simply wasn't true, but he went on to believe it, right? He says, and that's what got me in trouble. He did not realize he had the full capacity to change the thoughts in his head. And a lot of the times he did use his wife as a lifeline to help him change the voices that were coming so he didn't drown in them. So that was part of his battle of his spectrum. Yeah, he loved her so much. Oh my God, you guys, I can't even express how much he loved his wife. He says he wants people to find the adventure in being human, in being you, in being yourself, and how just awesome it is to be you. You chose to be you. So it's really a great time to adventure into you, to see what that's all about. But it doesn't always come with a lot of action. Okay, he's saying that a lot of the battle is because the divine masculine is losing footing on an earth that is changing into divine feminine. So there will be action in life, but there will also be a lot of time to, he says, being human, getting to know the self is really about the divine feminine. So a great way to do this is like, if you're like, because male and female both have the divine feminine and divine masculine aspects to themselves, right? So he's saying like a good way to practice this is if you guys, if you're into axe throwing, if you're into like taking classes with axe throwing, he's saying go to a class about flower arrangement. He's saying for the woman, If they're into like the whole gardening aspect and the whole flower arranging, go to a class with axe throwing. He's saying that is part of the adventure of journeying to self, coming to peace with your own spectrum, is to experience situations and things that would be the complete opposite of what you're used to. Because it's still like going deeper, deeper, deeper into self. He says, because we're in a world of opposites, but nobody really chooses to explore the opposite of what they're used to. And he says that's part of the adventure. So he says, for people who are always looking outward for the adventure, he's like, these people would be really, really surprised and overwhelmed in a really, really good way with, if instead of looking outside for adventure, if they looked in to see what was happening with them in this moment. He says the hermits out there, the people who have spent so much time in self-reflection, it's time to go out into the world and connect with the spectrum of other human beings to find that adventure. So it's never just one way or the other. It's like a combined effort. And he says, once you experience and start exploring the opposites, so the divine feminine goes to divine masculine, all that kind of stuff, you will slowly journey into that spectrum of light and invite all these different colors and energies that you're holding on to, start to invite them to come and play. And it's just, he says, when people get that just a little bit, he says he has so much fun with it. He really does. He just has so much fun with watching people explore. It's almost like, watching a kid or a baby grow up and learn, these first steps, the first words. But with a human, when they actually learn about and put into action the adventure of being human and not just going out to be like, I don't know, some sort of rebel, but actually just getting to know themselves on all these levels. He said it's just such a joy to watch, and he just wants to congratulate everybody that's getting involved in that work. He says humanity is turning a corner. They really are. Regardless of what you see out there or not, he says internally humanity is really turning a corner. And he says it's just so great to watch. He says it's so great to watch. So he said he just wanted to come in and validate for people how much work they are doing. He just wants to give like a really big high five to everybody. He says he knows it's hard. Like, he's like, people with the New Year's resolutions and stuff, he gives it to you, and he wants to offer you his encouragement to keep that going, to just get to know yourself. And like, people make resolutions because they want to see what they can really do. And the battle is like, it gets hard. The follow through gets hard. But when you make a resolution, you're connecting to a part of you that really wants to express itself, that really wants to heal, that really wants to come to terms with, that really wants to reconcile. So the adventure of that is the follow through. Some people say it takes 21 days for a change to occur. He says a change could occur within 3 days. So he's like, yeah, he's just like, he really, 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 really celebrates all of you who are really, really putting in the effort to be human. And he's saying, sorry, Kim, like, I wish she had said that better. I'm like, no, that's okay. Like, we all come to this earth to be human. But there's so much emphasis on that I just really question what that was really about. Like, is it just to sit on our laurels? And I understand that that's part of it. Like we sit and we go within and we just be. And I'm not that kind of person. But I think being human is also discovering how powerful that is, how monumentally life changing that is, how we could not only change how we perceive ourselves, but we could ultimately change how we perceive this whole friggin' earth, right? He says, yeah, he says, COVID put a lot of stuff in perspective, he said. For a lot of people, it's put a lot in perspective. He said, it's given people no choice but to start discovering what it's like to be human. Humans are just now starting to figure out how vulnerable they are. He says, but there is so much power in being vulnerable because being vulnerable is actually being honest. He's like, this world is just done with the lies and the garbage and the rumor mill. And he says he celebrates it. He says he doesn't know what he's going to do with himself once the battle's over. And he says he doesn't think that the battle will be over for a while. But he says that he can see it. So, yeah, he says, try not to think of life as some sort of battlefield because your perception of that is just you're battling self, you're battling what's trying to emerge, you're battling what's trying to transform within you. Once that transformation occurs within you, it's going to transform everything about the world you live in because you will be able to see it with brand new eyes, brand new vision, clarity. And that clarity is going to come, he says, but you just have to trust yourself in knowing. My dog's stretching. You just have to trust yourself in knowing. Because you know, he says. It's not a question about what you don't know, what you do know. You know. You're just battling what you know. Because your knowledge doesn't exactly look like this person and this person and this person's knowledge, right? He said, there's a number of sheep and there's a number of shepherds, but that's reversing. And he says, the shepherds aren't just now like leading the sheep. He says they're actually starting to empower them, which is good. He hates the sheep analogy. Whatever, man. It's like, but that's all I got because that's what people understand. So I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. So yeah, he's just saying Happy New Year, everybody, and he's thanking me and he's saying thank you for taking a moment to just kind of tell it. And I'm like, no, that's fine. That's fine. Because I was really confused. Like, I have to say, like, when I saw that, I was like, yeah, I know I came here to be human, but I don't think people give enough credit to what that means. We're not just simple, simplistic, friggin' three-dimensional people. We're here to just evolve and grow and like realize we're planet changers, we're world changers, we're on the precipice of so much. Like, do we just sit and wait for that to happen, or do we contribute something? And I think that we are more than capable of contributing our creations, our creativity, our talents, our expressions of love. And if we are constantly battling ourselves, we are constantly going to be battling other people. And where is that really going to get us, right? So, yeah, it was cool. So, do you have anything else? No, he says that's it. He's like, thanks. No problem. So, yeah, I will end it there. And we'll see when I can talk to you guys next time. I'm going to try to put out maybe some more light language if I can. And if I put up my glasses, you can see my raccoon eyes. I'm trying to like find a setup where it's like I can have my mic and my light and I don't have to be in the dark, because the last video I felt like I was really in the dark. So whatever. Yeah, so I'm going to end it there. Have a really, really, really awesome, I think it's Sunday, so have an awesome week. It's kind of that time of the year where the days kind of blend into each other. So whatever. Oh yeah, and like I got a really good deal on glasses. So I have like 4 pairs of glasses, but I was wearing a different pair before, but because I have all this lighting and stuff, it's like transition. So they were getting dark and it was like really ticking me off. So I had to change my glasses. But anyway, first world problems, right? So I hope you guys are all well, and we'll talk to you later. Take care.